Chapter 2. The days that followed were the strangest I'd ever known. Not strange because anything was wrong, strange because nothing was. Adam and Eve walked through the garden together, and I watched them learn each other. How she laughed. How he listened. The way their hands found each other without looking. God still came in the cool of the day. Now he walked with both of them, and their conversations had a new rhythm. 3 voices instead of 2. Questions and answers in the kind of silence that isn't empty. I didn't understand it, but I liked watching it. My assignment hadn't changed. Eastern boundary, watching for threats that didn't exist yet. The garden's edge was quiet. Beyond it, the rest of creation stretched out wild and untended, beautiful but not like this. Not cultivated. Not home. Sometimes I'd patrol the perimeter with Hazel, and we'd talk about what we'd seen. Adam teaching Eve the names he'd given the animals. Eve discovering things Adam had missed, patterns in the flowers, the way certain birds sang only at dawn. They were learning the garden together, and somehow that made it more theirs than it had been when Adam walked it alone. "They're happy," Hazel said one evening. He sounded almost surprised. "Why wouldn't they be?" I said. He didn't answer right away. We stood at the boundary, looking back toward the heart of the garden where the 2 trees grew. The tree of life with its golden fruit. The other one beside it, heavy with fruit that looked almost the same. "The command," Hazel said finally. "Don't you think about it?" I did think about it. God had told Adam before Eve existed. 1 tree forbidden. 1 rule in all of paradise. Eat from any tree you want, but not that one. The day you eat from it, you will surely die. "They haven't gone near it," I said. "Not yet," Hazel said. There was something in his voice. Not doubt. Exactly. Hazel didn't doubt. But there was weight there. The weight of knowing something could change. I looked at the tree. From this distance it seemed ordinary. Fruit hanging in clusters, leaves rustling in the breeze. But I knew what it was, the knowledge of good and evil. The one thing God had held back from them. "Why do you think he put it there?" I asked. Hazel turned to look at me. "What do you mean? He could have put it anywhere, on a mountain, at the bottom of the sea. Beyond the stars where they could never reach it. But he put it here, in the middle of the garden, where they walk past it every day." Hazel was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe that's the point," he said. "What is?" I asked. "The choice." He looked back at the tree. "Maybe love has to be chosen. Maybe obedience only matters if disobedience is possible." I turned that over in my mind. We had chosen too, hadn't we? When Lucifer rebelled, when he took 1/3 of the host with him, we had chosen to stay, to serve, to trust. But we had known God. Known him face to face, voice to voice since our creation. We had no excuse for rebellion. What did Adam and Eve know? A few days of walking with him. A few conversations. And 1 rule. Was that enough? I wanted to believe it was. Days passed, or maybe weeks. Time moved differently in the garden. Slower somehow, like it wasn't in a hurry to reach whatever came next. I watched them tend the plants, work the soil, care for the animals that wandered through. Adam showed Eve his favorite places, the waterfall where 4 rivers began, the hillside where you could see the whole garden laid out like a tapestry, the clearing where God usually met them. She showed him things too. The way certain flowers opened only at night. A family of deer she'd befriended. A patch of berries so sweet they made Adam laugh out loud when he tasted them. They were building a life. Not just existing, but creating something. Purpose and rhythm and joy. And then I saw him. He came from the east, which meant he passed right through my section of the boundary. I should have stopped him, should have fought him. But he moved like he belonged there, and by the time I realized what I was seeing, he was already inside. I knew him. Not well. He'd been above my station, one of the beautiful ones close to the throne. I'd seen him in worship, his voice rising with the rest of ours, and I'd thought he meant it. I'd thought they all meant it. Now he slithered through the undergrowth, and everything about him was wrong. The same intelligence in his eyes, but twisted now. Calculating. Patient. I moved to intercept him, but Hazel grabbed my arm. "We can't," he said. "He's going to. We can't." His grip tightened. I looked at Hazel, and I saw it in his face. The constraint, the order that bound us as surely as our loyalty. We could fight the fallen in the upper regions. We could guard boundaries against external threat, but this was different. This was a choice that had to be made freely. We couldn't stop the serpent from speaking, and we couldn't stop Eve from listening. I watched him approach her. She was alone near the center of the garden, not far from the two trees. Adam was somewhere else, working, trusting that she was safe. Why wouldn't he trust? Nothing had ever threatened them. The serpent didn't rush. He moved through the grass slowly, almost lazily, letting her notice him in her own time. When she saw him, she smiled. She smiled at everything then. The world was still friendly. The serpent stopped beside her. "Did God really say you can't eat from any tree in the garden?" His voice was smooth. Curious, like he genuinely wanted to know. Eve shook her head. "We can eat fruit from the trees in the garden," she said, "but God did say not to eat fruit from the tree in the middle of the garden. We're not even supposed to touch it or we will die." I noticed something. God hadn't said anything about touching it. That was new, added. Where had that come from? Fear, caution. The first small step away from what God had actually said. The serpent tilted his head, a gesture that might have looked sympathetic if I hadn't known what was behind it. "You won't die," he said. "God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened. You'll be like God, knowing good and evil." I watched Eve's face, watched the words land. Watched her look at the tree, really look at it in a way she hadn't before. She was thinking about it, considering. I wanted to scream at her, to step between her and that tree, to tell her what she was about to lose. But I couldn't move, couldn't speak. The constraint held me like chains. Hazel stood beside me, rigid, his jaw clenched so tight I thought it might shatter. Eve stepped closer to the tree, looked at the fruit, saw that it was beautiful, saw that it looked good to eat, considered what the serpent had said, that it could make her wise. She reached out her hand. Time seemed to stretch. I've fought battles that lasted hours, and none of them felt as long as the moment between her reaching and her taking. I wanted time to stop. Wanted something, anything, to change what was about to happen. Her fingers closed around the fruit. She picked it. She ate. I don't know what I expected. Thunder, maybe. The ground opening. Some immediate sign that everything had changed. But nothing happened. She stood there, chewing, and the world kept turning. The sun kept shining. The birds kept singing. Maybe she thought the serpent had been right. Maybe she thought nothing was different. Then she turned and saw Adam walking toward her, and she held out the fruit to him. I still don't understand that moment. Why didn't she stop? Why didn't she tell him what she'd done and let him decide without the fruit in his hand? Why did she want him to share it? Maybe she was already afraid of being alone in whatever was coming. Maybe the knowledge had already started working in her, showing her things she'd never seen before. Or maybe she just wanted to give him something beautiful, not understanding yet what it would cost. Adam looked at the fruit, looked at Eve, looked at the tree, He knew. I could see it in his face. He knew exactly what she'd done, what this was, what it meant. And he took it anyway. He ate. This time I heard something. Not thunder. Something smaller. A sound like a door closing very far away. Or maybe I just felt it. A shift in the air. A weight settling over the garden that hadn't been there before. Adam and Eve looked at each other. And then they looked at themselves. I saw it happen, saw their eyes change. Saw them really see each other for the first time, and what they saw made them flinch. Adam and Eve looked down at their own bodies and something passed over their faces. Not just awareness, shame. A word I didn't have until that moment because nothing had ever needed it. They grabbed leaves, fig leaves, broad and rough, and started covering themselves, covering the bodies God had made and called very good, hiding what had been beautiful. The serpent was gone, slipped away into the undergrowth while they were distracted. His work was done. Why? I asked Hazel. Why didn't he stop it? He knew, he had to know. Hazel shook his head slowly. The choice had to be real, he said. And now? I asked. Hazel didn't answer. He was looking toward the heart of the garden, and I followed his gaze. God was coming. The cool of the day had arrived. The time when he always walked with them. But this time was different. This time they heard him coming, and instead of running toward him, they ran away. They hid, among the trees, in the shadows, trying to be invisible from the God who had made them from dust and breathed life into their lungs. Like children who think covering their eyes makes them disappear. Where are you? God's voice rolled through the garden, not angry, not yet, just the question. The same voice that had called light into existence, that had named the stars and set the planets spinning. Now he was walking through his garden, asking the creatures he loved most where they had gone. Adam's voice came from the shadows, smaller than I'd ever heard it. I heard you in the garden, he said. I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. Who told you that you were naked? God asked. Did you eat from the tree I commanded you not to eat from? Silence. Then Adam answered, and something in it made my chest tighten. The woman you gave me. Adam said, she gave me fruit from the tree. And I ate. The woman you gave me? Not Eve, not his bone and flesh. The woman you gave me? Already the distance growing between them? Already the blame spreading. God turned to Eve. What have you done? He asked. Her voice trembled. The serpent deceived me, she said, and I ate. I watched God's face through this. The grief there was unlike anything I'd witnessed. Not surprise. He wasn't surprised. But there was pain, deep and real, the kind of pain that only comes when someone you love chooses to walk away. He turned to the serpent, who had crept back to witness his triumph. Because you have done this, God said, cursed are you above all livestock and wild animals. You will crawl on your belly and eat dust all the days of your life. The serpent's form twisted, contracted. What had been beautiful became low and wretched. But there was something else in God's words, something I almost missed. I will put enmity between you and the woman, God continued, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. He, not they. Not the humans in general. He. I didn't understand it, but I filed it away. A promise buried in a curse. Something coming that I couldn't see yet. Then God turned to Eve, and his voice gentled even as the consequences fell. I will greatly multiply your pain in childbearing, he said. In pain, you will bring forth children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. Eve's face crumpled. She reached for Adam's hand, but he didn't move. He was staring at the ground, waiting for what he knew was coming. To Adam, he said, Because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree I commanded you not to eat from, cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat from it all the days of your life. Adam's head dropped lower with each word. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, God continued. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. Dust you are. Adam had always been dust. Made from the ground, shaped by God's hands. But now there was an ending attached to it. A return. Death had entered the world, and it had entered through a choice. I thought that was the worst of it. The curses, the consequences, the weight of what they'd done pressing down on everything. But then God did something I didn't expect. He made clothes for them, not leaves hastily grabbed and pressed together. Real coverings, animal skins, soft and durable, tailored to fit. I watched him work, and I realized what I was seeing. Something had to die so they could be covered. The first death, the first blood, all so they wouldn't have to carry their shame unprotected. He dressed them himself, hands that had shaped them from dust, now clothing them in the death of something else. Covering what they'd tried to hide with something better than fig leaves. I still don't understand it. They'd broken the one rule. They'd chosen the serpent's lie over God's truth. And his response was to kill something innocent and wrap them in its skin. Justice and mercy in the same moment. Punishment and protection with the same hands. God looked at them, and his voice carried a weight I'd never heard before. The man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil, he said. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. Live forever, in this state. Knowing good and evil, carrying shame, hiding from God. That would be its own kind of curse, wouldn't it? An eternity of separation instead of intimacy. An eternity of hiding instead of walking together. The exile was mercy. I'm still not sure I believe it, but I think it was. God sent them out of the garden. East, through the boundary I'd been guarding. Past me as I stood there, unable to speak, unable to stop what was happening, unable to do anything but watch. Eve was crying. Adam's face was stone. They walked past, and I felt the weight of it, the enormity of what had changed. Paradise closing behind them. The world outside waiting, wild and untended and full of thorns. And then came my orders. Guard the way to the tree of life. Michael's voice, clear and final. No explanation, no reassurance. Just the assignment. I took my position at the eastern edge of Eden, where God had placed the cherubim. The flaming sword moved in every direction, a barrier of fire and power that nothing could pass. I stood there, and I watched Adam and Eve grow smaller as they walked away. They looked back once, just once, Eve's face wet with tears. Adam's arm around her, pulling her forward. Then they turned away and kept walking. I stood at that boundary for a long time. The flames moved beside me. The garden lived on behind me, untouched and perfect, but empty now. No one to tend it. No one to walk with God in the cool of the day. Hazel found me there after the sun went down. "You're still here," he said. I didn't turn. "This is my post." He stood beside me, looking out at the darkness beyond the garden. Somewhere out there, Adam and Eve were making their first camp. Learning to survive in a world that no longer yielded easily. "It wasn't your fault," Hazel said quietly. "I know," I said. "The choice was theirs." I nodded. "I know." But knowing didn't make it easier. I'd watched it happen. Watched the most precious thing God had made in this world choose to walk away from him. And I couldn't stop it. Wasn't allowed to stop it. "Why does he love them so much?" I asked. The question I'd been asking since Adam first opened his eyes. Hazel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised me. "Maybe that's not the question," he said. "What is?" I asked. "Maybe the question is why they don't love him back." Hazel's voice was heavy. He gave them everything, one rule, one tree, and they chose the lie. I thought about that. About Lucifer, who had known God since his creation. About the fallen who had walked in his presence and still turned away. About Adam and Eve, who had so much less and still made the same choice. "I don't understand any of it," I said. "Neither do I," Hazel said. We stood there together, watching the darkness. Behind us, the garden breathed and grew, waiting for someone who might never return. Ahead, humanity stumbled into a world that would fight them at every turn. And somewhere in the middle, God was already planning the next thing. I didn't know it then. I didn't know about the blood that would come, the first death of a human at the hands of another human. I didn't know about the corruption that would spread, generation after generation, until the whole earth groaned under the weight of it. But I think God knew. I think he knew it all, from the first bite to the final end. And he let them choose anyway. That's what I still can't get my mind around. That the choice mattered so much that he let them make the wrong one. The fire burned beside me. The stars wheeled overhead. And somewhere east of Eden, humanity began its long walk towards something I couldn't see. I don't understand him. I don't think I ever will, but I trust him.
Chapter Guild, Stories for Your Mind.